Thank you, Dr. Tim. I appreciate you.
You're welcome and deserving. Have a wonderful show.
Thanks. So welcome, everybody, to the second hour of MindShifters Radio. And today is Wednesday, July the 19th, 2023. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581 and press 1. And that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. And while we're waiting on Michael to dial in, I'll just say that testimonial that Terry gave, and he actually gave part of it on the radio show the other day when he talked about going in the bank and his anger came up, and so he put himself in timeout. And so we asked him if it was okay if we put that out on the website as testimonial. So it is out there now. It's under testimonials. It's under the link under today's radio show. You can also find it there and click and listen. It's just a few minutes long, and it's powerful. So thank you, Terry, for doing the work and sharing with us the changes that you've seen. And we appreciate you. So let's see, what is going on this week while I'm waiting on Michael? Tomorrow, the 20th, we normally do the regular book club on the 2nd and the 4th Thursday. Well, on the 3rd and 5th Thursday, not every month has a 5th Thursday, but so tomorrow is the 3rd Thursday, and they'll be doing the Course in Miracles. You can access those if you go to the website, and you can click on schedule, or you can go down to events, either one, and you'll see it says under schedule, it's got Global Online Book Club, and underneath it, there's a Global Online Book Club, Course in Miracles. And so you can pick up the archives for all of those and listen to them. They're very powerful. They just finished Chapter 6 of the Why Is This Happening to Me Again book, and under the Course in Miracles, they have listened to Introduction and Advanced Understanding to A Course in Miracles, and then the New Beginning. And this coming week, I think they're going to be doing What is the World?
What is the World? Yes, that's the plan.
Awesome. Okay. There's so many of them going on, I kind of lose track. And then we have, if you're not familiar with it, under schedule, you can also pick up the free 3-hour Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop. That's the latest one. You can also pick up, if we do a summer season or online intensive or anything like that, you'll pick up those schedules. There's also the Codependence Communication Self-Study information. There is the instructional videos to navigate both the website and the app. And then there's also information for the MindShifters Still Point Breathing monthly meeting that we do on the 3rd Saturday and Sunday of every month. So there's a lot of opportunities out there, and it's growing. There's more and more people that are participating in that, and we appreciate their participation and their feedback. So this time I'm going to welcome Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and thank you for the unfathomable amount of work that it takes to keep that 20,000 plus page website in order and keep on top of it. We couldn't do it. Pardon me, I should say, I certainly couldn't do it. So people owe you a great deal of thanks for what you've done to put that together, and also to all the support that we get from Daniel and Susan. So thank you all for empowering us to bring this forward on a global scale. And the MindShifters and Still Point Breathing workshop this weekend was, I guess we could say nothing short of miraculous. The things that opened, the energy that moved was just, it was awesome. And we do the breath work on Saturday. When we do this, it's a once-a-month thing. We do the breath work on Saturday, and then we do a process session on Sunday. And I got the gift of a major Still Point session out of the energy that moved. I think I got a boost in vitality, so it took me into a healing crisis the next day. And so I got to do a pretty nice piece of work that was mainly there were some things that processed and moved physiologically, and there were some issues that moved through, but they weren't cognitive for me. I could, there were things, you get into a state where you're really in deep process, and they were just on the edge of awareness, but not truly cognitive. But physiologically, got a major shift, and so thank you everybody that was in the workshop. That was just a sweet, sweet process. And beyond that, Miss Nini, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
Let me walk back in there. I stepped away for just a moment and getting the little girl settled here. She's very cooperative to look on her tablet and do some learning lessons while we're doing the show, and so we appreciate that. We've had her Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday this week. That's awesome.
We're blessed.
I think all the hands that are up were up for Dr. Tim, so no, and no comments in the chat room. And
well, then we've missed reading for a while. How about picking up on the reading, sweetie?
Okay. This was actually a challenging chapter because we decided it's called The Path of Unconditional Happiness, and it talks about if you want to be happy, and so we decided to change that if you want to be loved instead of be happy. So as I'm reading, I know you're used to even listening to songs on the radio, changing the language as you go, and I'm not as skilled at that, so it may take me just a bit to do this change.
Good practice, and we did speak about that the other day. If you didn't happen to be on the show, reading this section on happiness, what in the actual world, happiness is a thing that the mind. It's actually a hit of dopamine, which has been called the body's happy powder, that is triggered into activity when a goal is achieved. And so we're not interested in that type of life. It's a nice life. It could be cool and all that, but it's not actually living, achieving goals and being happy about it. And sadly, some people achieve negative goals and are happy as a result. That's where people get into negative behavior, and it's a negative feedback. Well, there's a positive feedback loop about a negative behavior. So if people achieve a negative goal, they get this shot of happy powder, and that's one of the reasons why the world has gotten so crazy. But what we're moving in the direction of, rather than supporting people in achieving happiness, happiness will be a byproduct of living as a human being. So what we're looking to do is to support people in realizing who they are as love and bringing that state of being into physiology. When that happens, the result is joy. So that would be where we want to go, is to bring that state of joy. It's beyond happiness. It's not, people are, I'm happy I got that, I'm happy that happened, I'm happy about this. But joy is, in the words of Teilhard de Chardin, who was a paleontologist and actually a Catholic priest, an interesting combination. You can look up some of his work is online still, and I worked with his material back in the, I guess probably the early 60s, late 60s, I'm not sure. In any event, some good stuff. But what he said, and I think very accurately, was that joy is the infallible sign of the awareness of love. He actually used the word God, but equating God as love, then, and of course, we would need to still adjust that a little bit, because if that were true, because the Creator is omnipresent, love is omnipresent, if that were true, then everybody would be in joy all the time. Actually, we need to insert one word, and that is joy is the infallible sign of the awareness of the presence of love. So it is always present, but it can be covered up by the hostilities and fears of the mind. So where we want to head is to that state of experiencing ourselves and being able to cognize, bring into cognitive awareness that that's the state of every one of us. And the more we can hold that state, the more we're going to tend to live in joy and be empowered to fulfill all goals. And when that happens, you don't get addicted to happiness. You you live is love. So just a brief explanation to that. And Miss Jeanie, rock and roll.
Okay, and I had given, there were two things. The last time that we read was actually on the 13th. And prior to our show, Dr. Tim had been reading from A Walk in the Physical and talking about, going beyond your limited view and the perception you created. And I had used Arya's example. We had kind of a flood in the kitchen. And she said, yeah, but everything now is nice and clean and shiny. So turning it into something positive. And then we had used the example of Terry saying he put himself in timeout when he felt his anger coming up. So it's being able to be aware when something's in your face and using the tools to do something with it. Let me see. She's wanting something from me here for a second. Hold on. Okay. If you can talk for just a second.
Sure. I'm not sure whether Jeanie mentioned, but one of the people that was in the MindShifters and Still Point Breathing Workshop is a gentleman that's been doing this work for some 20 years or so. And he had shared with us in the intensive, actually, Jeanie, she probably mentioned, I'm not sure, before I got on. But he had shared in the Still Point some of his history with an abusive criminal father that was in jail, alcoholic, abuse, weapons, just crazy stuff. And that he began to do this work, and it's a pretty powerful share when he talks about his history, and then decided that following Father's footsteps was not where he wanted to live. And he really keyed in, and for several years did this work, and then came and spent 2 years on the support team at Heartland. And the morning that he left Heartland, he completed his 2 years and was on his way back to home. He stopped in a hotel for the night. It was a 2-day drive. And he called us the next day, and he reported that for the first time in his life, he woke up without fear, without depression, without trepidation, without pain, and physiologically was in the physical presence of love. Just exactly what we're talking about, joy. Just for the first time in his life, like the full-blown physiological experience. And my offering is that's what we're designed for. Ultimately, you and I are designed to live in the full-blown physiological presence, with every cell in our structure being fueled by the active presence of love. And the world has other ideas for us. The world has been brainwashing us, sadly, for generations and generations and generations. And most people spend about 40 years in those generational patterns. You'll remember the story of the Jews wandering in the desert for 40 years, as though one could get lost in a 35 square mile hot sandy place for that many years. Kind of silly. But we realize that's a metaphor for living unconsciously. So when we live unconsciously, thoughts run the game. And when thoughts run the game, thoughts create the feeling nature. If the thoughts aren't based in truth and aren't based in who we are, then the tendency is to feel pain, trauma, rage, upset at the slightest provocation. And once you start clearing out those thought disorders and aligning with the mind that is of love, then physiology begins to work at a whole new level. Diseases disappear, symptoms disappear, all kinds of things happen. So Jeanie put the recording, she separated that recording out for us so we'd have it. Terry was happy to make it available as a kind of a testimonial. And so the link is in the notes if you want to give a listen to what Terry shared directly from him. And I hear you're back, sweetie. I'll turn it over to you.
Yes. And it's also on their website under testimonials as well. So you'll be able to find that in several places. All right. So it's, things are going to happen, and, but it's up to you whether you stay connected to love. And the example I always give is like the story in the scriptures where the disciples were afraid. There was a storm and they were in a boat, and they saw Yeshua walking on water. And Peter had said, you know, I know if you ask me to step out, I can walk on water. And so Yeshua told him, come on. Nothing changed in that circumstances. The storm was still going on. Everything was still rocking. But as long as he stayed focused, he walked above the storm. He walked above on top of the water. And then when he started looking at his circumstances, he sank. And that's when he cried out for help. So it's up to us. We each have different storms going on in our life, and it's up to us whether we walk on water or whether we sink. And so back to the reading, it says, the last line that we read was, if you can live this way, your heart will be open and your spirit will be so free that you will soar up to the heavens. This path leads you to absolute transcendence, because any part of your being that would add a condition to your contentment to happiness or being loved has got to go. If you want to be love, you have to let go of the part of you that wants to create melodrama. This is the part that thinks there's a reason not to be happy or not to be content, not to be loved. You have to transcend the personal, and as you do, you will naturally awaken to the higher aspects of your being. In the end, enjoying life's experiences is the only rational thing to do. You're sitting on a planet spinning around in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Go ahead, take a look at reality or actuality. You're floating in empty space in a universe that goes on forever. If you have to be here, at least be happy and enjoy the experience. It says you're going to die anyway, but we know that's not a requirement. Things are going to happen anyway, and why shouldn't you be happy? You gain nothing by being bothered by life's experiences or events. It doesn't change the world. You just suffer, and there's always going to be something that could bring up bothering you if you let it. This choice to enjoy life will lead you through your spiritual journey. In truth, it is itself a spiritual teacher. Committing yourself to...
And living in that state does change the world. Living in pain literally changes the energetic patterns that radiate out from us. And because the governing energy or the governing law of the universe is a resonance, if we fall into living in that state of hostility and fear, then we will over and over attract from the world energetic experiences that are based in hostility and fear. So I would disagree with him there. It does change the world. At least it changes what we radiate out into the world and the results we produce. So when you start to step into that space where it is only love, then it doesn't mean all negative experiences go away, but it does mean, one, you don't fall into them, you don't fall face first into them, and two, they tend to soften, dissipate, and disappear.
So committing yourself to being will teach you every single thing there is to learn about yourself, about others, and about the nature of life. You will learn all about your mind, your heart, and your will, but you have to mean it when you say that you'll be happy or be being for the rest of your life. What is that quote that you've said before about all you have to do? I think it's out of A Course in Miracles, but you have to mean it.
Yeah, there's a passage that says if you want happiness, joy, aliveness, all the things you say you want, there's one thing you have to do, only one thing you need to say. And it's like, well, gee, who wouldn't say that? There you go. And then there's a caveat in there that says, say only this, but mean it with no reservations. I create the world I experience. I choose the goals that I achieve. And whatever comes to me, I have asked for and received as I have asked. Deceive yourself no longer that you are helpless in the face of what is done to you. Acknowledge but that you have been mistaken, and all effects of your mistakes will disappear. Now, Of course, anybody could just say that. That's easy. But the part that says, and mean it with no reservations, because, virtually everybody on the planet, at least everybody that I know of, by the age of 4, in this culture especially, but in most cultures of the world, are quite literally card-carrying members of the one world universal religion of blame. It's all everybody else's fault. And you can't hold unconscious blame dynamics, whether they're yours or they go back 5 generations in your bloodline, and make that statement with no reservations. You can't do it. So this work is about opening every level and every aspect of this energy system, yes, right back into our genes, and get out of the desert, get out of the state of unconsciousness, get out of the generational patterns, and step into the truth of who we are. Yay.
Awesome. So committing yourself to being will teach you every single thing that there is to learn about yourself, others, and about nature of life. You will learn all about your mind, your heart, and your will, but you have to mean it when you say that you will be love for the rest of your life. Every time a part of you begins to feel unhappy, let it go. Work with it. Use affirmations, and we've talked about that before, that you really don't want to do affirmations because that's kind of like spraying air freshener on the trash can because it stinks. It works, but you have to keep it up, because if you let it go, then the stink is going to come forward. So instead of doing affirmations, you want to go inside and remove whatever it is that's unlike being. You want to forgive. But he says use affirmations or do whatever you need to do to stay open. If you are committed, nothing can stop you. No matter what happens, you can choose to enjoy the experience. If they starve you and put you in solitary confinement, just have fun like Gandhi. No matter what happens, just enjoy the life that comes to you. As difficult as that sounds, what's the benefit of not doing it? If you're totally innocent and they lock you up, you might as well have fun. What good does it do to not have fun? It doesn't change anything. In the end, if you stay happy, you win. Make that your game and just stay happy no matter what. The key to staying happy or being loved is really very simple. Begin by understanding your inner energies. If you look inside you, you will see that when you're happy or when you're being loved, your heart feels open and your energy rushes up inside of you. When you aren't happy, you're not being loved, you're not connected, your heart feels closed and no energy comes up from inside. So stay happy. Don't close your heart. No matter what happens, even if your wife leaves you or your husband dies, cancel those thoughts. You don't close. There is no rule that says you have to close. Just tell yourself that no matter what happens, you're not going to close. You really do have that choice. When you start to close, just question if you're really willing to give up being. You should examine what is inside of you that believes that there's some benefit to closing. The slightest thing happens to you and you give away your happiness or your being. You were having a great day until someone cut you off on your way to work. It got you really upset. It triggered you into upset. Stayed that way for the rest of the day. Why? Dare to ask yourself that question. What good comes from letting it ruin your day? There was no benefit. If someone cuts you off, let go and stay open. If you really want to, you can. I always use the thing, somebody zips past me or something like that, I go, whoo, they must really need to go to the bathroom. They're rushing to get home. Just turn it into something different instead of taking it personal. If you take on this path of being, you will go through all the various stages of yoga. I'm not familiar with yoga, so I don't know what that is. You will have to stay conscious, centered, and committed at all times. You will have to stay one-pointed on your commitment and remain open and receptive to life. But nobody said that staying open is what the great saints and masters taught. They taught that God is joy, God is ecstasy, God is love. If you remain open enough, waves of uplifting energy will fill your heart. Spiritual practices are not an end in themselves. They bear fruit when you become deep enough to remain open. If you learn to stay open at all times, great things will happen to you. You simply have to learn not to close. The key is to learn to keep your mind disciplined enough so that it doesn't trick you into thinking that this time isn't worth closing. If you slip, get back up. The minute you slip, the minute you open your mouth, the minute you start to close and defend yourself, get back up. Just pick yourself up and affirm inwardly that you don't want to close, no matter what happens. Affirm that all you want is to be at peace and to appreciate life. You don't want your happiness or being to be conditional upon the behavior of other people. It's bad enough that your happiness or being is conditional upon your own behavior. When you start making it conditional upon other people's behavior, then you're in serious trouble. Things are going to happen to you, and you're going to feel the tendency to close. But you have the choice to either go with it or let it go. Your mind will tell you that it's not reasonable to stay open when these things happen. But you have limited time left in your life. Cancel that. And what's really not reasonable is to not enjoy life. If you have trouble remembering that, then meditate. Meditation strengthens your center of consciousness so that you're always aware enough to not allow your heart to close. You remain open by simply letting go and releasing the tendency to close. You just relax your heart when it starts to tighten. You don't have to be outwardly glowing all the time. You're just joyful inside. Instead of complaining, you're just having fun with the different situations that unfold. Being is a very high path and a very high technique because it involves everything. You could learn yoga techniques such as meditation and postures, but what do you do with the rest of your life? The technique of being is ideal because when you're because what you're doing with the rest of your life is already defined. You're letting go of yourself so that you can remain in love, in being. As far as your spirituality goes,
and there's a whole other reason to do this. And I had a fun conversation with Ari yesterday. Ari is 4. Actually, she's going to be 5 next month, which is really just freaky that she's turning 5 already. But we've got several compost piles. And I was going through one of the compost piles and found a piece of wood that was the core, the inside of a tree that had fallen not far from our house, and it was rotting quite nicely. So I gathered a bunch of it and brought it home to put in the compost pile. And so I picked one of those pieces of wood up and I gave it a twist. It's pretty well broken down and opened up, showing it to Arya and showed her as it broke open. You know, the piece was maybe 2 inches square, and there were probably 50 baby ants in it. They're still white albino ants, tiny, tiny ants. And we talked about what we call in naturopathic medicine reducer organisms. And of course, well, the conversation I had with her is, you know, this is a part of the inside of a tree. So if this were still part of the tree, it wouldn't be being eaten. It wouldn't be breaking into pieces. It would be hard. It would be solid. It would be alive. It would be strong. The reason it's decaying is because it's disconnected from its source. It's disconnected from the tree. And when disconnected from the tree, when there isn't a vital supply of energy, or that vital supply of energy is removed, then there are things called reducer organisms that are designed to reduce that back to dust and put it back, give it back to the earth to build something again in the future. So return it to the soil. And so then our conversation went to, you know, she's well on her way to her master's in naturopathic medicine already. She's just so interested and so in the conversation. And we created a comparison. So, you know, if you get a thing they call an infection, what is that? Well, it's an organ or it's a part of the body. It's cells, it's tissue that are disconnected from a proper power supply from love. They become weakened. They start to decay and die. And there are bacteria and viruses that are designed to enhance that decay and return that tissue, that part of the body, just like this piece of wood, back to its source, back to the earth, to be remolded into something else in the future. And the obvious question, of course, that Arya responds to with total clarity. So this piece of wood disconnected from the energy of the tree, so it's decaying. What is it that we need to stay connected with in order for our cells to stay alive and vital? And she puts her hands up in a heart sign and says love. And it's exactly true. When we disconnect, it's no different. Disconnecting from love. Well, you've probably heard me in a Y workshop, or if you haven't, if you've done a worksheet, you've seen the rose and the butterfly story, and perhaps are or not familiar with it. But let's imagine we have a rose and a butterfly. The rose and the butterfly meet. They fall in, quote unquote, they fall in love. They have this wonderful time together. And one day the butterfly up and flies away. The rose, knowing that the love of the butterfly, the relationship with the butterfly, is the most important thing in its life, uproots itself and gives chase. What happens to the rose? It's going to die. Why does it die? Because it made something more important than being connected to its source. The saying here is, there is nothing more important than being connected to your source. If you make something more important than staying connected to love, then you disconnect your tissue structure from the power that's designed to fuel it, and you initiate your own death. Death is voluntary. All death is suicide. We do it to ourselves. Go back into the ancient scriptures, and it tells us very clearly, with man, death began. We made the process up. We were not designed for it. And what several years ago became very clear to me was that if in fact the physicists are right that there's only energy and energy is eternal, then we must be energy and we must be eternal, and it's only the form that changes. What causes the form to go through the change we call death? Disconnecting from the power supply. So just so you're clear on what you're going to have to do, you're going to have to face every thought disorder that has ever disconnected anyone in your bloodline and resulted in their death. And you're going to have to forgive it. This is not a wimp's work. Following Yeshua is not, there's an easy path that people talk about and you just let him do it all for you. But that is absolutely not in accord with his words. There is a work to be done. One particular group of disciples or apostles, another word for it, when he told them they had work to do, literally grumbled, moaned, said, too hard a saying, and left. I think they're the ones that made up this story that you don't have to do anything. In fact, you're really a sinner and you can't do anything, and that's just the way it is. He's got to do it for you. That's a lie. That's a plain, straight-up fraud. There's a work to be done. And I'm offering that the work that needs to be done is facing every energetic pattern that has ever disconnected anybody in your bloodline, ever, because that's in our genes, to face those energies, process through them, forgive, and reconnect with Source. Reconnect with Source. What is the Source? The Source is that conscious, active, present love. So that's the challenge. Yep, it's a big task, but there's nothing else like it when you start on that path. Go for it, Miss Jean.
Okay. This chapter is called The Path of Unconditional Happiness, or The Path of Being Love. That's why we're here, isn't it? To be loved. He says that's a good chapter. Okay.
Yes.
So, as far as your spirituality goes, you're going to grow very rapidly. A person who actually does this every moment of every day is going to notice the cleansing of their heart. This is because they're not getting involved in the stuff that comes up. They're also going to notice the purification of their mind because they are not getting involved in the mind's melodrama. Their spirit is going to awaken even if they know nothing about the spirit. They will come to know a happiness that is beyond human understanding, the contentment of being loved. This path, daily life, and it solves spiritual life. The greatest gift one can give to God is to be pleased with his creation. In other words, with yourself. Be loved. We're created in the image of God and in the image of love. Do you think that God likes to be around people that are happy or around people that are miserable? It's not hard to tell. You just think about it by imagining that you're God. You created the heavens and the earth so that you can play and experience yourself, and now you're dropping down to check in on the humans. So God asks the first human he sees, how are you doing? The human says, what do you mean, how am I doing? Well, how do you like it here? Well, I don't like it here. Well, why not? What's wrong? Well, that tree is bent in 5 places, and I want it to be straight. This person went out with somebody else, and that person ran a $100 phone bill. This person has a nicer car than mine, and that person dresses funny. It's just terrible. Plus, my nose is too big, and my ears are too small, and my toes are weird. I'm not happy with it. I don't like any of it. Well, God says, how about the animals? The animals, the ants and the mosquitoes bite you. It's a terrible thing. I can't go out at night because there are all these animals out there. They howl and they poop all over the place. I just don't like it. Do you think God likes listening to this? He says, well, what do you think?
That's hilarious.
That I'm a complaint? What do you think? That I'm a complaint department? And then he goes and visits somebody else, and again he asks, how are you doing? The person says, I'm ecstatic. God says, wow, well, how do you like things? Oh, they're beautiful. Everything I look at just creates waves of joy inside of me. I look at that bent tree, and it just blows me away. The ant comes, and it bites me, and it's just so amazing that a tiny ant could be brave enough to bite a giant like me. Now you guess who God wants to hang out with? One of the ancient names for God in the yogic tradition is, and I can't pronounce it, it means eternal conscious bliss. God is as high as it gets. If you want to be close to God, learn to be love. If you remain spontaneously happy and centered, no matter what happens, you'll find God. That's the amazing part. Yes, you will find happiness, contentment. You will find love. That is God. But that's nothing compared to what you're really going to find. Once you have passed through trial by fire, and you are thoroughly convinced that you will let go no matter what, then the veils of the human mind and heart will fall away. You will stand face to face with what is beyond you because there is no longer a need for you. When you are done playing with the temporal and the finite, you will open to the eternal and infinite. And then the word happiness or love, I can't even describe your state. That's where words like ecstasy, bliss, liberation, nirvana, and freedom come in. The joy becomes overwhelming and your cup runneth over. Beautiful path. Be happy. Be loved. That's the end of that chapter.
You remind me, or he reminds me as he says this, there are, well, scriptural quote first. It says, I think it was Paul that said it, beware you who judge another, for that in which you judge another, you have been guilty of practicing. And it's interesting that there are certain sects of so-called Christianity that, I mean, they literally put their fingers up like a cross and and start yelling about how satanic yoga is and that these people are chasing Satan. And the conversation's about living as the presence of love. And they have no idea that what they're doing when they do this whole, competition thing, like my God's better than your God, and therefore yours must be Satan, when this is a group of people that's moving toward exactly the same thing that Yeshua talked about, and that was living as the presence of love in relationship to neighbor. And interestingly enough, the word neighbor means anybody that you think about. Once you recognize that the requirement is, it's like you've heard me say before, what do you bring to the party? There are a lot of parties in the world. Party of hate and fear and rage and guilt and grief and joy and aliveness and fun and party and, all sorts of things. And the question becomes, what do you bring to the party? Do you bring conscious, active, present love to each event that you visit in your world? If you don't, then you don't have a human life. And it's time to reclaim your human life. Over the centuries, there have been many paths. Many cultures have many different paths to reclaiming their human life. And you know exactly what the person who talks about all those satanic worshipers, you know exactly what they're worshiping, and they don't even know it. By the way, in the Aramaic language, there is no dude with a red suit, a tail, and a pitchfork that's out to get us. The word Satan means the resistor. In the original context of the language of this man, Yeshua, the word Satan means the resistor, one who misleads. Now, you watch the average person that is a member, a card-carrying member of the one world universal religion of blame. It's all everybody else's fault. And when you invite them, you say to them, gee, I've noticed you doing this rage and hostility thing, golly, 87 different times with 42 different people. Have you ever noticed that? Oh, no, wait a minute. Let me tell you how that's justified. And they go into total resistance to any responsibility. And then they've got a story about somebody else, a lie their mind tells them about how it's all somebody else's fault. So recognizing that Satan is the resistor, one who misleads, the average person, when they're asked to be responsible for their lives, is in the state of, no, not me, and here's my story about how it's all somebody else's fault. Most people in the Aramaic context, the original Aramaic context, as Yeshua used the word, are living their lives trapped in Satan. But of course, when you make it the red dude, the sail, and the pitchfork, you can get people in all kinds of fear, and people become very controllable when they're connected to fear rather than love. So it all becomes a big wake-up call. And we are here to do the wake-up job.
And
we're
have
glad that you're here to join us. Oh, great. Let's say hello to our caller.
I think that this is Yumana, 808. You're on the air.
Hi, aloha. Yes, it's Yumana.
Hi, Yumana. Welcome.
Apologies.
Yes. So I'm just going to be completely honest, yeah, because I don't know. That's the best way.
Go for it.
I've been on this path for a long time, yeah, and I know that a big part of my journey here is like the generational. I don't know. I don't want to bring fear into the mind, but curses, yeah. But I know it's like I'm like a generational breaker or something.
Thought disorders of the generations, yes.
Yeah, and it seems so overwhelming at times, because ego wants to come in and just tempt me with doubt and stuff like that, and try to bring me back into the patterns and stuff like that. And it's just sometimes I just like, I like when Jeanie was saying about like don't give up or something, 'cause you know, I'll admit sometimes I'm just like, why am I doing this? Like, why do I have to, you know, fix myself or something? You know,
be the early adopter.
What'd you say? Huh?
Yeah, why do I have to be the early adopter, the first one in the family to do it?
Yeah, like why do I need to be? You know, because then I also noticed that a pattern of mine, which is weird, is like I'm the one that will trigger others, and then get triggered over the trigger, which is my own trigger. I don't know. It's kind of odd, but
actually, it's very common.
Yeah. So I was just wondering, what's your take on that like, this part of me just feels like that's the ego, that it's just like impossible. Like, it just feels like it's impossible. I'm still getting over this cold, by the way, but so my voice sounds weird, but it's like it's just, I just feel like it's impossible. Like, I know it's not, but
well, it's a huge task. There's no question about it. I mean, when you start realizing that this body-mind unit is a biocomputer that is designed through its senses to capture and store every frequency in the range of the senses. And those energetic patterns are stored holographically in every cell in the structure, including the sperm in the egg. So were you to conceive a child tomorrow, that child would have it in structure, every thought you've ever thought, every feeling you've ever felt, every reality you've ever engaged in, everything you've never resolved in your life, and every skill and wonder and beauty that you've achieved in your life is going to be passed on to the next generation. That is the way this multi-generational database called a body-mind unit works. And if you do the numbers, you know, if you count 30 generations, just do the math. You know, first there was 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, that mathematical progression. In just 30 generations, there are 1.6 billion people in your bloodline and mine. And then just go to generation 31, and now there are 3.2 billion people. Or pardon me, 32 billion people. 1.6, 3.2, 6.4, 12.8. You go back 35 generations, there are 12.8 billion people, lives in your genes. Yeah, it's a big task. And, you know, I personally don't know, haven't seen anywhere in my historical bloodline, can't identify anybody that could even have started to have the conversation you're having with me right now. So my offering would be, you've done the biggest breakthrough in that you comprehend the task there is to be done. And yes, it's a monumental task when you recognize that what ultimately needs to be done in order to truly live fully as a human being is we need to come to a level of vitality where we can literally blow off, remove, forgive every energy that is not supportive of love that's come through our genes from anybody in our bloodline. It's a pretty big task. But once you realize it's there, what else is there to do?
that's true. Yeah. So there is nothing else.
So patience is a virtue. You know, I can look at things. When I was a kid, I was almost, actually, the day my mother had toxemia the last 6 days I was in utero, and they gave her Pitocin to try to force me out. And the day I was being born, they called my father at work and said, if you want to see this kid alive, you better get down here because he's not going to survive the night. And I was almost dead 3 or 4 times the first year of my life. When I was a kid, the first 2 weeks of school every year, I was in an oxygen tent in the hospital. I wasn't in school. And I lived literally on an inhalator and pills. And there came a point where I realized that while that was keeping me alive, it was killing me. And I needed to do something. And that's what started my journey, started me looking at, wait a minute, there's got to be another way to do this. And about 6 years later, I left the business world. I literally closed down 3 businesses, went back to school to study naturopathic medicine and this type of understanding, and have been engaged in it full time for the last 50 years. And I'll offer that, for me, the most important interpersonal work that I've done in terms of my own process has happened in the last 2 to 3 years. And I've been working on it for 50 years, a little better than 50 years, actually, full time. I was engaged about 6 years prior to that, part time.
Yeah.
So it's a major task, but you know, when you create an opening and you reach another level, to me it's just so inspiring, so delightful, and so exciting. It's like, who would want to do anything else?
Well, Yeshua did it. We can do it.
There you go. That's it.
Do you think that since Yeshua was in the Jewish bloodline, yeah, do you think that there's a significance in that? Like, I don't know. I'm not sure if I even know how to. I don't know how to explain it. No.
Well, maybe ponder the
like,
question, and we'll have another conversation in that regard.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah. So when you say, Doctor, to forgive, part of my mind, I'll be honest, even though I've been on this path for so long, and myself probably really like getting much more disciplined the past couple years, part of me just can't get over this forgiveness thing. Like, to forgive is to overlook and to not make illusions real. But then still there's part of me that still says, yes, Dr. Ryce did that. Don't you know? Not
Actually,
you did anything.
Yeah, my take would be that those things that you just mentioned are not forgiveness. They're the result of forgiveness. Forgiveness is the act. You know, when you realize, and Jeanie had mentioned earlier, reality and actuality, you know, in this work, the output of the mind, the constructs of the mind perception are what I identify as reality, and then there's actuality. If a construct of the mind, a perceptual construct, shows up containing some form of hostility or fear, what forgiveness looks like is knowing that that construct is driven by a goal, canceling, removing the goal from the mind, which causes the construct to collapse. Once the construct collapses, and if you look at the worksheet, you'll see in step 4 of the worksheet, you bring love conscious, active, and present before you cancel that goal, before you remove the goal, so that the construct collapses. And when a pained construct collapses in on itself, into its own footprint, and gives us access to that underlying trauma energy or hostility and fear-based energy. When we're in direct contact with the underlying hostility and fear-based energy, and love is present, that fear-based or hostility-based energy dissolves. It dissipates, it disappears, it transmutes. That's forgiveness. The result is, I don't hang out with those judgments, those traumas, those dramas. I know how to dissolve them when they come up. So it's the dissolution of thought disorders and mental constructs that result in pain through the act of forgiveness. That would be my take. And that's where the worksheet comes in, the step by step. Here's how it's done. The first step, you proclaim who you are as love. The second step, you look at the situation and who's involved and what you own your thoughts, you own the emotions that are moving. And then you step into a space of willingness. So I'm willing to go through the physical, mental, emotional symptoms of healing, and then identify what's the goal that's driving this pained perception at this moment, establish love in the mind, make sure that it's solid and connected, then cancel the goal, and when the goal is canceled, it's the driver for that perception. You know, there's some interesting Harvard research that shows, and this is, you know, probably the most well-researched and most often quoted psychological piece of information in history. It goes back into the 50s, and what they showed at Harvard was, you know, they had electrodes hooked up to the brain, and they showed that in a time frame where there were 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity, 10,000 brain cells firing, that our conscious awareness, the perceptual construct of the mind, occupied a maximum of 9 bits, 9 spaces out of that 10,000. So a little tiny framework. And recognizing, and to me, it took me over 30 years, almost 35 years, to understand this, working with first century Aramaic forgiveness, a la Yeshua's original Aramaic language. And that is that, obviously, if our perceptual constructs are made of a little tiny select bit of data, something must select that data. And what selects that data is our goals. Mm-hmm. In the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag or shabak, and it literally means to cancel. What do you cancel? You know, do I cancel the person that I'm looking at that I think is a problem in my life? Well, that's murder, probably not very wise. Do I cancel myself? Suicide? Thanks, I'll pass on that. What can I do? I can identify the goal that's causing my unconscious to use pained content, unresolved generational content, most likely, to build this pained structure called reality. By canceling the goal, I collapse my reality. And just like the 9/11 towers, when they collapsed, that reality collapses into its own footprint. You get to access what underlies it, whether it was something that happened when you were 2, or something that happened to great-great-grandmother, or something that happened to great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. It drops the energetic pattern at the root of this perceived pain becomes available when we allow the mind to collapse into it. And when that comes forward, when that root energy comes forward in the presence of love, that's where the transmutation takes place. That's where the actual forgiveness occurs. So that's the step-by-step worksheet process that we've developed over the last 50 years or so.
Aramaic Keys of Life. I have a lot of things printed out, but I'm not sure if I have that worksheet.
Okay. Well, I think did I send you an article?
Yeah, maybe that's
sent you an article. It's in there. You can also go to your app store on your phone, and in the app store, type in Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness, and you'll see the world's only forgiveness app. And the worksheet, there are actually 2 different versions, a simpler and then the standard version of the worksheet, and you can do the worksheet right there on your phone. And also, Jeanie designed that on any page in the app. If you've got a question, you go, geez, you know, this step 2 doesn't make sense. Why am I doing this? There's a button you can click, ask your question. Geez, something about this, you know, whatever the question is, hit send, and Jeanie will get it, and we'll read that the next day on the radio show, and then send you back an email telling you when we answered it and a link to the show so you get your answer.
Thank
you,
that's
Dr. built right into the app. Actually, Jeanie's the one to thank for that one.
Thank you, Jeanie.
You're welcome. I just put in the notes for today. So, like, if you go to the website and you click on the microphone, then over on the right-hand side, you'll see, like, the year, the month, and then it's by day. And so in the notes for today, I put a link to a free 3-hour Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And I think I put that in the notes that I sent to everybody that was in the Still Point Breathing, too.
It is in there.
But you can watch that, and then I also put in a link to the PowerPoint presentation, which, you know, kind of helps because it's a visual that you can watch, and it explains the forgiveness process in a PowerPoint.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And deserving.
That's right.
Hey. All right, young lady. Appreciate the call. Keep in touch with us, and anytime there's a question, we're here. That's what we're doing this show for, to keep on top of people's questions. And of course, every time somebody asks a question that I haven't asked yet, I get to learn something else. So thank you for your questions.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha. Mahalo. Thanks, everybody, for joining us at the best year yet of your eternal life. It's an awesome gift to give.